Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everybody, welcome the panelists, the speakers and the attendees to this Effort University UN75 Conversation. It's a series of webinars that we started last week, was the first one, and this is our second conversation. I would like to start by introducing myself. I am Dr. Mal Nouri. I am a faculty at the Effort College of Engineering. I'm a provost also of Effort University. Effort University is a leading non-profit private university for females and recently males in Saudi Arabia, Jeddah. The university aims to inspire leaders for future to becoming a living ambassador for the legacy of the founder, Queen Effort Athnayan Al Saud, God rest her soul. Effort University is hosting this virtual session, as you probably all aware. That's why you are here, to connect people and amplify their voices, to inspire action for better future for everyone, and especially to engage our youth to take part in their future. UN75 Conversations, it is an initiative launched by the United Nations, specifically by the US Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He promises that this is going to be the largest ever and the furthest global conversation ever to build a better future for humanity and for all of us. I quote here, in a world of dramatic changes and complex challenges, from the climate crisis to population shifts to the unknown course of technology, we need collective action more than ever before. Through UN75, the United Nations will encourage people to put their heads together to define how enhanced international cooperation can help realize a better world by 2045. This is 25 years from now. We have today 5 distinguished experts whom I'm very, very excited to hear from and to listen to their talks and to their discussion today. And I believe you are as well, and that's why you are joining us here today. We have Dr. Malak Al-Thaqafi from CACS, King Abdulaziz City for Science and Technology. We have Dr. Mariha Hashmi, she is from NEOM. We have Mr. Uthman Al-Muammar from MISC and the chair of Y20. We have Mrs. Celina Al-Maia, she's a Shura Council member. And we have Dr. Sumaya Al-Sulaiman, Imam Rahman bin Faisal University, Dean of College of Design. I'll give you a brief before each of the speakers start their talk, but I'm just introducing the panelists at this time. Our experts today will help us answer 3 big questions. What kind of future do we want and do we hope for? And are we actually on track for that future that we're planning to have? And what are the actions to complete and to bridge the gaps, if there is any? The agenda for us for this discussion today is going to be 10 minutes for each speaker, will enlighten us from their perspective, from their point of view, from their area of expertise. I believe Mr. Uthman is going to talk about from future generations and youth perspective, Dr. Maliha from health and healthcare and perspective, Dr. Malak as well from medicine and health perspective, which is very timely for us now, especially with the crisis happening today and the COVID-19 situation that we have today. So it's all interlinked together, and it will be part of our discussion, inshallah. After the discussions, the talks from the speakers, we will have a survey that will be launched for you. All the attendees and the panelists will be able to actually answer this survey, and we will see in the spot the results of the survey, and we will analyze our results. We'll have a discussion around the answers for the survey. The survey asks about the most decisive issues today that we need to address. and in which order, and why do we think these important, and how do we shift our focus in order to guarantee a better future for our future generations. After the survey, then we'll have some time for your questions, for the attendees' questions, and then we will conclude the meeting. I hope you will enjoy it. I would like to mention that after this meeting, all the discussion, resulting from the speeches and the actual questions and answers will be compiled, and the survey results will be compiled and shared with the UN in a report with all the attendees' names. So if you would like to be part of that, please let us know so your name will be part of the report that will be sent to the UN. Now I would like to introduce our first speaker and start with the speaker session, Dr. Malak Al-Thaqafi. She's American board certified physician scientist in clinical pathology, anatomical pathology, and neuropathology, and molecular genetics pathology. She currently Deputy Director for General Directorate for Research and Innovation and Associate Research Professor at King Abdulaziz City for Science and Technology, CACS, known as CACS. She is the founder chair of the Genomics Research Department and primary investigator of the Saudi Human Genome Lab at King Fahd Medical City Research Center in Riyadh. She is certified associate research professor at Baylor College of Medicine in the Department of Molecular and Human Genetics and founder of iGen. So please, Dr. Malak, you can start.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everybody. And I would like to thank Dr. Malak Al-Nouri for this opportunity to talk today. As you heard, I have kind of diverse background. I think you just forgot the business background as well. So I also have a background in business. I did official degree of MBA at Johns Hopkins. So this came together to meld I was just wondering, what should I talk about today? Which part of my background? And I decided to talk from where I am right now. I started this position with CACS, King Abdulaziz City for Science and Technology, almost with the beginning of the year, January 4th. And then at that time, CACS was working very hard to, for those who doesn't know CACS is the house power for research and innovation in Saudi Arabia. It played a role similar to National Science Foundation or NIH for example, in the US. So CACS, the last 4 months, even before the COVID-19 pandemic, were working very hard to restructuring their thought or their future, if you will, to answer some of these questions Dr. Malak asked. So with this, I will just make it quick for you. We decided to focus on 7 themes. We call this Strategic Innovation Program. Galaxy, 7 topics in this galaxy: in energy and decarbonization, in food, water, and environment, in smart city and transport, production and industrialization, digital technologies for future, space and security, and finally, the closest one to my heart is advanced precision healthcare. And under this advanced precision healthcare, I will focus today. We identified 3 areas. One of it is the infectious diseases innovation action platform, and this is for sure COVID-19 had to play a major role on it. Another one in supporting the pharmaceutical and drug factories in the kingdom, and the third one is working on genomics application for our communities. So I will take it from there. I will talk about genetics. Why genetics? Because actually it drives all the 2 other themes. Just a quick introduction. Genetics, for those who doesn't really have medical background, is a study of hereditary and impact of individual genes as opposed to the study of the full genome. When we talk about full genome, this means we call it genomics. So advances in genomics and genetics improve our understanding for susceptibility toward particular disease. For example, when we do genetic testing, we refer to examination of specific part of our DNA or RNA that have known function that usually build our result on previous, some prior understanding of underlying biological contribution to trait or disease. Now, This field was kind of luxury a few years ago, until 2003, when the announcement of the completion of the Human Genome Project. From that, I will tell you where we are today. The global genomic market is projected to reach $35.7 billion by 2024. That's raised almost 50% from where it's now. Today, in 2019, it is 18.9 billion US dollars. And this is actually very, estimate is not really accurate. Because, for example, with COVID-19, where we all hit the world all of a sudden, we had should raised in genomic industry because, for simple reason, all this test you hear of is actually based on genomics and genetics. So it's forecasted to grow very quickly, and this include multiple factors. The cost of sequencing, or how we read this genome, is really falling. Growing investment from pharmaceutical companies and many national and international projects using genomics. For example, there is the Saudi human genome, UK genome, Fin genome, etc. There is multiple countries taking this very seriously. And this expectation will drive the investment in areas such analytics and data management and ethics training very quickly. However, this is a very bright picture of it. The genomic industry is still at very early stage of development. Using genomic to predict, cure diseases, and improve disease management is not just depend on what we sequence, but also involve understanding interaction between multiple genes, impact of environment factor, and requires sufficient clinical investment, which we usually lack nowadays. This complication will act as a constraint to industry growth, and to particularly the growth of the genomic application markets. For example, most of the companies right now generate revenue from only sequencing or reading the genome. Very small proportion assigned to sampling, interpretation, and analysis. This sequencing stage, we know, is very mature and expected to be the slowest growing in the value chain. But going forward, we expect more commercial revenue from analysis and interpretation. And here where is the most of the challenging come. Now, when I talk genomics, you really have to talk about economics. The economics for investment in genomics is highly important. Precision medicine, or personalized medicine, which is another term we'll introduce for those who don't know it, is giving the right treatment for the right person at the right time. It's purely right now based on the patient genomic data. In the future, we're expecting more and more to add this genomic layer. But this precision medicine requires more precision economy. So understanding genomic data is a key element of moving toward precision medicine. There is a number of proposed benefits to precision medicine, including more effective treatment and potentially lower population costs in the healthcare system. However, in order for genomic industry to successfully move toward precision medicine, it will require significant buy-in and investment from the healthcare system and the government and the pharmaceutical sectors. Review of this barrier, health economic barrier, reveals there may be barrier for the future for both precision medicine and genomic industries. Now, I will share with you my vision as a physician, beginning with the healthcare system. The investment in translatable genomic and precision medicine is cost-effective if the targeted nature of treatment improves patient outcome whilst reducing the overall cost compared to the current module of care. We call it in medicine a measurement called QALY. For example, a drug that was traditionally provided to all patients might only receive a response from some patients while others suffer adverse events. In a successful personalized or precision medicine module, where only patients with relevant biomarker are treated, more patients will respond, and there will be fewer with no adverse effect. For these models, you have to achieve three key conditions. First, you have to have this biomarker information for all patients. And also you must have the relevant treatments that must be available and tested. And then you have to have the entire process should be still cost-effective for smaller patient group. Now, precision medicine requires precision economic because the cost of treatment will be high, driven by significant R&D investment for a relatively small population. The challenge is that precision medicine could transform life and determining the precise value of this intention is difficult. The saving not from treating some patient who would benefit should not be counted in the economic case. As a result, there is uncertainty about when precision medicine tests provide economic value, and there are gaps in the evidence base. So now let's tell you a story why we started to do, for example, the Saudi human genome, or any nation, why they wanted to do this kind of project. Around 80% of the existing genomic data we have in this universe, since we completed the Human Genome Project 17 years ago, is used to inform the development for precision tests and treatment. This data have been gathered from people with European or Caucasian ancestry. So now you can see the huge bias. This means the most of the world population could be missing out on a vital healthcare innovation. With around $200 billion spent on pharmaceutical research and development worldwide every year, it costs around $2 billion to develop a single new drug, taking 10 to 15 years. Fewer than 1 in every 10 candidates would never make it to the end of the journey. Only 8% would make it to the market. Treatments that seem promising in animals or cells or in the labs often fail when faced the reality of the human population. Now, why we wanted to have genomics? When we add genomic data, the average cost of development halves to about $1 billion. The time to market can be reduced 3 to 4-fold, mean 3 to 4 years, and the chances of succeed jump to around 1 in 4, 26%, a 3-fold improvement. We urgently need to increase the diversity in genomic databases and use this information to develop insight for precision medicine that are tailored to specific people and their population based on their genetics makeup. We believe that precision medicine and digital health will allow people all over the world to leapfrog into the future and providing more tailored healthcare solutions for a diverse growing global population. The potential to transfer health on a grand scale, ultimately we would like to change the health opportunity for every person on the planet, wherever they live and wherever they come from. So in Saudi Arabia, we built upon the existing infrastructure the government invested on 5 years ago. What we called as a Genomic Strategic Innovation Program. The Genomic Strategic Innovation Program aligned with our vision for 2030 and the healthcare transformation strategy. We aim to sequence our genome, we aim to use the genome sequencing of Saudi population to reduce the high burden of inherited diseases, giving our habits for intermarriages and contiguous marriages, improve clinical decision, and also enable personalized therapy, accelerated medical research, and while being very cost effective in this difficult world economy. And I think COVID-19 gave us a huge lesson, what we are missing by not investing very well in R&D related to healthcare system, like in a field like genomics and personalized care and digital care. With this, I will end with the sum of few challenges that, although this is very promising, but we still have a lot to work, especially for the youth who are hearing this. There is key challenging to implement this kind of vision or therapy. It's a huge, it's not a cheap therapy now. Now it's your role to come up with a sequencing code that costs us $1 or less, or even 1 penny, to be able to do this for the bigger world. There is a huge skill shortages in bioinformatics and how to analyze this data and make the interpretation. There are key skills required to grow genomic commercially and improve implication. Their shortage in these skills are for sure will restrict the potential growth. There also a huge challenge in commercialization and scaling up. And this is, I can tell you from my position, we really faced a huge problem when it comes for this kind of pandemic. Sometimes we cannot, the simple raw material, if we don't have it in-house, you really stop your entire kind of testing strategy. So this is a commercial and scaling up what we have and coming up from scratch locally will remain a key constraint for this industry to go unless we figure out the solution to help the world to do it. It would be valuable to learn from the challenges the world seen in the growth of the biotech industry to help the emergence of scale of genomic businesses. And lastly, you cannot work in a separate world on your own bubble. We really have to accelerate the application and reducing the barriers to healthcare adoption. Because if you came up with a great innovation and your healthcare colleagues not use it, I think it's a total waste. So we continue to build the relationship, and we should think as a scientist how to build a relationship between academic research and clinical application with the major player. For example, Ministry of Health, with WHO, and all of these things. This will improve the pathway for implementation and and will actually solve any upcoming opportunities or solving any challenges very quickly. Thank you very much. I hope I did not exceed the 10 minutes.
Thank you. You actually did exceed, but it was very interesting. And we do have I do have myself so many questions to ask, but I will leave this to the questions part so we can listen from the other speakers as well. Dr. Maliha, now we can hear from Dr. Maliha. She is the Executive Director and Deputy Sector Head Health and Wellbeing and Biotech at NEOM, where she was also served as the Executive Director for all strategic partnerships. Dr. Maliha also serves as a leading expert and council member for the prestigious Global Future Council on Health and Healthcare at the World Economic Forum. Recently, she was selected and recognized as one of the 7 top most talented emerging female health leaders of the MENA region. Dr. Maliha also received her doctorate and master's degrees from Harvard and MIT. تفضلي دكتورة، أهلا وسهلا.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, first of all, for giving me this opportunity to voice what I think was a very important future ahead of us, and a healthy future, inshallah. So that is a very big concern nowadays, and hopefully, inshallah, it will become a very simple way to address what are we facing at the moment. So as we experience these current times that are impacting millions a day, and we need to start from point zero. We need to rebuild, rewire, reconstruct, and think of what is really important for us in the future ahead of us. And at NEOM, at the Health and Wellbeing Ecosystem, we've identified 3 major points moving into the future that will be very important and very in line with this discussion as well. It's longevity, reversing chronic diseases, and empowerment. And when I say empowerment, I want all of you to think about youth empowerment, but empowerment as a citizen to be aware of your health and to be able to monitor it right from the beginning. So just before I begin, I wanted to just share with you some really interesting and also alarming statistics about the way the world is going in terms of longevity and healthcare, and then showcase what we are doing at NEOM on how to tackle those and what we hope to do in the future through youth empowerment as well. So despite advances in healthcare overall, life expectancy has not increased for the last 6 years. So due to physical inactivity, mental diseases, drug abuse, chronic diseases, and what's more is that the burden of chronic disease, such as diabetes, is ever increasing. Just an example for our own region, that 20% of the population in the GCC is diabetic. And in the upcoming decades, chronic disease will impact 92 million lives in the OECD countries, and will reduce the life expectancy by 3 years in 2050. But there's good news. The good news is that with the type of health and well-being ecosystem we're planning on building at NEOM, we hope to add 10 years back into your life, give you the 10 extra years of your life, and prevent and hopefully, inshallah, reverse chronic diseases like diabetes. While this is something that people think is not manageable, it's something that's completely manageable if we bring all the silos together and we work together to have all the stakeholders aligned. So let me tell you how this will work. I get very excited about this subject because it's a subject that's dear to us in these days, but it's also a subject that everyone wants to live a happy, healthy, long life. And it's something that is important for the just mental, emotional, physical well-being. And when the topic of healthcare or health is discussed, usually the topic is always at sick care. People immediately talk about healing the sick. But the real starting point of healthcare is overlooked and at times. And it's really about investing in healthy people. And when you invest in healthy people, you start from cradle to grave. That includes the youth. You provide that three-dimensional approach to health, where you are not looking at health as a physical health, but health as emotional health, health as mental health, health as spiritual health, health as physical, spiritual, mental, social health, where you feel accepted, loved, safe, and happy, and healthy, and in control. And how do we do that at NEOM? We have to start by healing the system. Usually healthcare systems are considered healthcare systems. And first of all, the first thing in our mindset is important is to sort of distinguish that and actually move away from calling it a healthcare system to a health caring system. That in itself is a switch, a paradigm switch in the way we think about health. That health is not just something that's given to you or provided to you healthcare when you're sick, but it's provided to you the day you're born into this world. And that in itself gives you an opportunity to be able to become completely in control of it. So what we're doing at NEOM is very interesting, is that we're taking a revolutionary approach to empowering citizens. And it's sort of moving away from the hospitals into the homes, workplaces, playgrounds, everywhere across from you. It's taking health to a new level of human consciousness, which is achieved through design and technology, but it's also built in through your systems by designing a city that's healthy by design. So if I was to sketch a day in NEOM for you, it's when you wake up in the morning, you have a city that's healthy by design, a city that's constructed as a huge gymnasium. So the natural reaction is your eagerness to go outside and go for a jog. It's not something you are forced to do, it's something you naturally want to do because of the design of the system, the make of the environment around you. When you come back, you have healthy food to eat, but you also have self-monitoring devices and self-nudging devices that are able to give you your stats or vitals on a daily basis, so you know exactly at what point you do need to get more care than just the self-care that you're providing yourself at home. And this in itself is not just a healthy individual that's physically healthy. I personally feel very, very happy to know on a daily basis how I'm doing personally before I need to go to a doctor or the likes. So if we have an individual who's healthy by design, you have a system that's healthy by design, and someone where you can monitor your own health on a daily basis, you're able to be physically but also mentally healthy. It provides you the sort of social, physical, and mental sort of well-being that is needed to be able to do other things in life. And if I was to reflect on something for you in terms of youth, so a healthy youth is an empowered youth. A healthy youth is an empowered youth. And what I mean by that healthy is not physically healthy. I hope for the future for you to be physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially, mentally healthy in a three-dimensional or more five-dimensional way. That who feels a youth that feels empowered, safe, protected, accepted, encouraged, not bullied, giving opportunities, and we can provide all those tools by creating a design system that's completely streamlined on a one end-to-end basis where everything is joined to the next thing. So your social life is connected to your healthy life because you have parks near you. You're encouraged even by your nudging devices to check in on your neighbors, to check in on your loved ones, to check in on your health. So on a regular basis, you're connected. And it's so important in this era, and we see from COVID-19 that we're all really socially distant, but what's beautiful about this era is also in the positive side is that we're much more connected than ever before. We've become cognizant of relationships, we've become cognizant of our health, we've become cognizant of our hygiene, we've become appreciative of our governments, we've become more socially aware. It's unfortunate it had to be through COVID, but it's also seen the optimistic side is that it has encouraged us to think beyond what's going on today. How do we develop this system? How do we go beyond the today to remain connected? I don't think I will ever overlook my nature walks ever again after this experience because it gives us that opportunity to be more mindful and to be more grateful of what's provided to us, but also gives an opportunity for different stakeholders and different levels to align and work together because we want to find solutions for the youth for the future. And when we have a health caring system that really focuses on cradle to grave, where you have a system that helps you monitor at your homes, and if there is a need, if you have immediate need, you have telecare, digital health, telemedicine. So we're building Dr. Neom, an AI empowered doctor available, virtual doctor available from the comfort of your couch, from your homes. So when you have the constant encouragement that you're okay and constant care and constant awareness, it develops the mind to be able to focus on things that you never were able to focus on before. It removes the worry about your health, about your social connectedness, and about creating a system that provides you with mental, physical, emotional well-being. And I think the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is at a very great advantage because the majority of our youth is 70% of the country is young. So when we provide this 5-dimensional or 3-dimensional healthy state, which I mean in healthy and physical, mental, spiritual, physical, emotional way, then you provide individuals with brilliant minds that want to tackle the future like never before, in one way or other, being in that healthy state where they feel empowered. And when we have this digital health and this immediate system that's completely interconnected, of course, with the use of genetics and genomics, we're providing people the self-care and precision care that enables them to live longer, to be avoiding of things that might cause chronic diseases, but also be completely empowered. This is a very small glimpse due to pressure of time of what we're doing, but just I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to connect and work together and create these systems, health caring systems, where everyone, not just the youth, every single citizen of this world feels empowered. And the opportunities with us now. Look at the way we're connected at the moment. We're bringing in people from across the world to connect and discuss these important topics. And people are now more eager to participate and give back to society that probably was never prevalent before, but because of this sort of self-mindfulness that has encouraged us to come together. And I think with that, I want to just close saying that as an empowered individual, we have the ability to tackle the most complex situations that come across us in the future, but we can do them when we're aligned together and connected, and also looking beyond just the health, because we will be in a healthy state by taking all the measures that I've just mentioned right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Amali. I totally agree with you. With the experience today, we feel much more aware, much more connected, and the experience made us grow into our human experience, to know more and to understand more and to be aware much more. It would be very interesting to know also how in NEOM specifically you're also addressing the issues of the other side of technology, how people are have the fear of the total reliance in technology, and what's the future with that. Probably with the discussion section of our session, then we go back to that. Okay, thank you so much. We move on now to Mr. Uthman Al-Muhammad. Uthman, he is the chair of the Youth 20 Engagement Group in 2020 and the research lead at the MISC Foundation, where he leads multiple research initiatives that aim not only to understand the challenges faced by young people, but also young people can take the lead in solving them. He leads the development of the Global Youth Index that tracks youth development in 25 countries, and the Global Future Skills initiative that uncovers future learning journeys for youth in 6 cities globally. He holds his bachelor degrees in finance from Penn State University and master's degree from Duke University. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, Mr. Uthman. The floor is yours. Ahlan.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here today. Thank you so much to Effort University for hosting this, and also thanks to the panelists and for the excellent moderator. And of course, thank you for attending. We're going through very, very difficult times now with COVID-19. This is especially true for youth. We are a very vulnerable segment, especially when it comes to employment, to upskilling. And today, basically, I'm going to talk about what I've been working on for the past 2 years, which is research on youth affairs. So if you can give me the rights to share my screen, please, so I can put up the presentation.
Yes, I think as a panelist, you can do that.
It's giving me an error message saying you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing.
Let me stop this sharing then.
Yeah.
Oh, how do you stop screen sharing?
All right, so while you're working on that, maybe I can get started so I don't take more time. So essentially, I've been working on for the past 2 years two main projects. The first is something called the Global Youth Index, which was essentially a large research undertaking to answer one question, which is how are 25 countries around the world, G20 countries included, are able to prepare youth for the knowledge economy. And our definition of youth here is essentially youth from 18 to 30 years old. Do you guys see my screen?
Yes, yeah.
Excellent. All right, so with this research, we're looking at essentially global youth from 18 to 30 years old, and we're going through these countries and asking them the questions around, are they preparing youth for the knowledge economy that's coming up within the next 5 to 10 years? And so in order for us to understand this youth development, we had the Global Youth Index and the Global Future Skills. So the Global Youth Index, we're looking at 25 countries, and we surveyed around 25,000 youth from G20 countries and also from countries who are experts with youth development, mainly Scandinavian countries who, for example, have been talking about youth affairs since the 1940s when people were at World War II. And essentially there we're looking at 5 main domains that we're judging these countries on. We're looking at education and skills, we're looking at entrepreneurship, we're looking at employment, we're looking at global citizenship, and the knowledge economy ecosystem, which is a fancy word for essentially macroeconomic indicators. And then the second project we looked at is something called Global Future Skills. And here, essentially, where we went to 6 cities, and these 6 cities, we didn't pick the New Yorks, we didn't pick the Bostons, we didn't pick the Riyadh, or like the mainland cities that you would expect when you're looking at research. We actually went to cities that are facing issues of change or challenges when it comes to shifting towards a different set of demographics. And within those cities, we went to like Austin, Texas, we went to Chongqing, China, we went to Lagos, Nigeria. And the rationale here is that these cities are actually facing a lot of change. And for us to study the future of work and future skills, we need to look at cities that are facing change. And we went to do interviews with 60 plus youth, and we would actually had a really long deep dive with each one. So we did a lot of analysis on identifying the right youth for the surveys, and we interviewed 60 plus youth across these 6 cities. And essentially we're ending up around looking at future skills in 5 main performance zones, which I'll go into a bit later. So first is the index, right? So this is the large research that we're working on. And here we found some really interesting findings. So if you look at the rankings here, you'll see that a lot of the developed countries are actually within the top 10. And developing countries are a bit lower on the scale, with Saudi receiving about 20 out of 25 in terms of preparing youth for the knowledge economy within the 5 main domains that we looked at here. Other interesting findings are quite specific to developing versus developed countries. So for example, so the index basically covers 25 countries representing about 80% of the world's GDP and 70% of the youth population. So it was quite representative of the answers that we were looking for. And so it's more jarring when you're reading these kind of interesting data. So we know that 50% of the world population is under 30 years old, but about 90% of them live in developing countries. And you've seen in the ranking that developing countries actually score within the lower half of the index, which means that's where 90% of the youth live. In addition to this, 25% of youth are not in education, employment, or training. We call this the NEET rates. And it's quite an effective method of figuring out unemployment. And 75% of the 20% actually are women. So women are quite negatively affected by this. By 2030, as many as 800 million jobs could be lost worldwide to automation. This is part of the struggles that we're living in, and this is not something new. Everybody has heard this. The key thing, though, here is that youth today are going to be the people who will need to prepare for that the most. And so our research shows essentially that 82% of youth surveyed were positive about lifelong learning, and 79% said education is necessary for success. This is very good news from a youth perspective. So for example, if I'm a policymaker especially in a developing country, I would definitely aim to focus on youth as my biggest treasure in order for me to improve upon my current country's standing globally, especially when it comes to the digital economy nowadays, as we are digital natives. More than 65% said they felt that new technologies such as automation and AI presented an opportunity, not a threat to society. This is also good and could be alarming in some sense. Youth are quite open to utilizing social media, are very open to getting on the latest elements when it comes to technology. However, the flip side of that is that there's also issues when it comes to privacy. There are also issues when it comes to security. And that's even more so today. Actually, what we're seeing with COVID-19 is that a lot of scams, phishing has been quite prevalent and increasing. And so we as youth need to be aware of that. The most interesting, I think, finding that made me scratch my head a little bit, honestly, was that youth in developing countries are actually more optimistic than youth in developed countries. We're talking about the youth in the lower half of the index here, or living in the countries in the lower half of the index. They're actually purported to be more optimistic than youth in developed countries. I found that quite interesting. And there is a link between optimism and entrepreneurship. We're seeing that youth in developing countries are more interested to starting their own business. However, the flip side of that is, while entrepreneurship is very good, there is a difference between entrepreneurship by want and then entrepreneurship by necessity. So if you have to become an entrepreneur in order to make a living, that's very different than if you actually want to start a business of your own. The other flip side of that is we're seeing that developed countries actually have the most unicorns. These are countries, these are businesses who have made it to $1 billion value or more. So this is part of the insights that we found. Now, when we're looking at what are the skills that you need to be successful? So we looked at, countries and how they're preparing their youth for the knowledge economy, and that's one perspective. But what about the actual youth themselves? What are the skills that they need in order to be successful nowadays? Maybe youth living in a country, for example, where there's not a lot of opportunity. What are the skills that you need to learn today in order for you to be successful? And these skill zones are 5. We identified them through our interviews with the youth. The first one is making yourself known, which is basically personal branding, right? So before 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you have to, have that firm handshake. You have to prepare your elevator pitch. You have to be aware of kind of like the company that you're going into. However, employers nowadays, they already know you before they see you physically, right? A lot of your information is available on LinkedIn. Yeah, exactly.
I remember.
Yeah, and actually, like they were teaching us to learn this as well. But then all of a sudden, the shift happens where employers actually seek you out and they make decisions for you based upon whether you are actually suitable of what you say, for example, online. And everything that you put online is very hard to reverse back, and sometimes you cannot delete it. So knowing your personal branding, and I don't mean this only from an online perspective and being reactive, but also from the perspective of pushing your own kind of what niche area would you like to focus on. The other is keeping it going. So this is building resilience in extreme environments. So this is an extreme environment right now with COVID-19. And so you being prepared for the unknown is the key element here. So one thing is constant that you'll always face from now until, forever is constant change. Change will come, and it will come rapidly, even more rapidly than before. So you being able to look at your skill sets today and recognize that you need to be a lifelong learner in order for you to excel in your own career, in your own personal life, is something that you need to be aware of. Third is building your tribe. Here is basically networking, essentially. So before, projects are with people who you work with together for 2 to 3 years. However, now we're moving into more projectized environment where you're coming in, people come in together very quickly, and then they leave very quickly, and then they come in together very quickly, and they leave very quickly. The interactions have increased. There has been a question on whether the quality of these interactions are the same, but the matter of fact is the interactions have increased. You creating or being able to understand the current difficulties with dealing with multiple people at once, and recognizing the opportunities and being friends with the people to help your own career moving forward, but also to provide value to them. At the end of the day, we have to be global citizens as well. We don't live in our own bubble. Fourth is befriending the machine. And this is essentially being digitally not only literate, but intelligent. As youth today, we have to be ready for that. And what COVID-19 essentially did is, instead of us having to worry about it from an abstract sense, we are forced to take that into account now. You'll see educational systems who were not able to be prepared for digital learning. And now, all of a sudden, in one go, everything is online by force. And so you being able to be digitally not only literate, but also intelligent is quite important. The fifth area is making sense of complex systems. So navigating the complex systems of the world to find your way. And essentially, this is really tied into data and also attention. So for example, today, everybody's vying for youth's attention. Whether it's private companies, whether it's like personal brands, whether it's friendships and so on, your phone, knowing when to draw the thresholds is very important. And second is structuring, we call them modeling, the problems that you face. And consultants are really good at this. So they come into an environment they don't know much about. What they do know is that they have these structures in place to come in, and then directly from that, translate the challenges into a structure that they can actually tackle it through. And then I will not spend much more time on this, as I'm sure there's more speakers coming up and I don't want to take more of their time. I just want to stress one more point here on future skills, and what we've learned is throughout the research is that you cannot wait for people to give you knowledge. You have to seek it out for yourself. Everything is available at your fingertips. This is a gold mine, and everything is available now even more so than before with COVID. You're seeing many universities, for example, you being here is actually being proactive. So I'm talking to the right audience. Maybe I shouldn't present actually to you guys. You already know this. But in all honesty though, this is a gold mine. And it's, if you have internet connection and the right device, basically you could get Harvard education, you could get Effect University education, you could get any education that you want to. It is right at your fingertips. And that's what I would like to end today. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Y20, but I'm conscious of time, so I will not go there, but thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Rahman. Actually, I cannot agree more with you than the importance of being active and proactive for your education, for our students, and for all of us. We learn from since we are born until we die. Basically, this is one of the challenges for educators today. When I started to teach, it was easy to give students, not easy, but it was the task of an educator to give information, to give knowledge to students. It's no more the case. We don't go and give them knowledge, because knowledge, and it's at their fingertips. Information is available everywhere. Our role now is to show them how to educate themselves, how to explore their skills, how to improve the way that their perspectives about the world. Give them different perspectives so they can work with, rather than just give them purely information. Thank you so much. Excellent talk. And I'll move now to our next speaker, Ms. Celina Almaina. I finally see her now. She was having difficulty joining us. Lina is currently a member of the Shura Council. She is also co-founder and CEO of Jeddah United Sports Company, one of the first Saudi private sports company to train girls and boys in teams sports to promote the culture of sports in Saudi Arabia. One of the 10 Saudi women climbers to Everest Base Camp, headed by Princess Rima bint Wender in 2012 as a breast cancer awareness campaign by Zahra Society. She holds a communication degree, French minor from George Mason University, my university, and master's in psychology from American University in London, 2005. Lina, welcome. Ahlan sahlan. Thank you for joining us today. We are ready to hear from you. I think I will unmute you. Yes, go on, please.
So assalamu alaikum, and peace be upon you everywhere. Honestly, I just have to say today I had the worst technical problems. I tried to hear as much as I could.
But you made it.
I made it, alhamdulillah. I also wanted to just clarify, I'm not a CEO anymore. I started as CEO of Jeddah United. Right now, I'm just a co-founder. And really, it has been so enriching and enlightening listening to all the previous speakers. I'm so proud of everything and everyone who's participated. I'm so happy to be part of this. Because it's the occasion of the UN75, I have to also voice our solidarity with the city of New York, as it is the host and the home of the United Nations. I also would like to thank IFET University as the platform, the first private, girls' college in Saudi Arabia. I mean, honestly, right now, I just feel like there's a lot, obviously, and I'm glad I was number 4 in this, just listening to the different specializations that I've heard. I don't want to keep it too long because I definitely do want to leave time for a Q&A. We know more than ever, COVID-19 has proved to have no gender, no religion, no ethnicity, no color. It has really united the world in a way I think that never before in the history of whoever's living today has experienced. And that is a positive thing. We can talk about what a lot of the nations have done, and they have done. There's been enormous, initiatives. Saudi Arabia being, honestly, I would say, one of the most successful nations to, in the way it's dealing with the whole epidemic or pandemic. That is, that's great. Saudi Arabia has donated over 500 million to the WHO. We're proud to say that we have Dr. Hanan Balkhi, who is an assistant general director for the antimicrobial resistance in the WHO, who is working night and day in Geneva, by the way, as we speak. And that is all great. But personally, I chose to focus on okay, obviously we have the elders, we have the children, we have people with disability who are definitely the weaker link in this equation. But we also have the refugee situation. And I think the refugee situation is, and the vulnerability of the people today who are in, conflict zone is really very important to address. You look at the Rohingya situation, you have 900,000 people that are basically, there were so many atrocities that took place. 80% of the aid is very difficult to reach them due to obviously the situation with the coronaviruses and all the precautions that the nations are taking. So it's hard enough for them being in conflict zones, let alone in a situation of a pandemic. So this is very important to also look at as we, shape them up for the future, for the 2045 100th anniversary of the United Nations. I really need to share really alarming and shocking numbers that I myself didn't know about before, preparing for the 10-minute speech with IFET, which is that 2.2 billion, more than 2.2 billion have a problem with water and access to water. They have a problem as they access water, especially now with the pandemic and having to use hand washing as a precaution. 1.8 billion are homeless or are inadequate, overcrowded housing. Now, the good thing that is going to happen to the world, even for countries like Saudi Arabia, for example, when we notice that 80% of the people who were confirmed a corona were in very heavily populated situations. So there's going to be a lot of legislations to make sure that the housing situation is decent for, is a human right, for the private sector, as well as just more legislations to make sure that we come out of this with a lot of lessons learned. So now, I didn't want to just mention the problem without proposing a solution. And I think that there has been a lot of requests to reform the United Nations. Now, this veto situation, in my opinion, needs to be abolished. We have 5 countries in the Security Councils. I think it's time. It's been since 1945, and Saudi Arabia, by the way, was one of the first also countries to join the United Nations. It is time to increase the number of countries in the Security Council. Why do we only have 5 countries? We have emerging economies. We have Japan, we have Brazil, we have Saudi Arabia. We need to have more countries. I mean, we're head of the, Saudi Arabia was the head of the G20, and it has been very successful in showing the wisdom in the world of its leadership, and also the citizens and how they have been abiding to the laws that are taking place today. So I think I will leave you with that proposal in terms of reforming the United Nations. The way it is today definitely needs to be looked upon. And I say it with goodwill, because I know that the essence and the objective behind the creation of this world organization was to promote peace and prosperity. We have SDGs, 17 SDGs that is all about, women empowerment, children's rights, even looking to the vulnerables, and et cetera, et cetera. Therefore, I think it's time for that reform to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lena. You actually touched on multiple and many issues of the focus of the United Nations and the focus of the world today, from forceful migration due to political conflicts, on now to also health situations, health crisis, to a role of international organizations and the multilateralism as all in the globe. So thank you so much, and we look forward to the discussion session with you. Thank you. Now we move on to Dr. Sumaya, our last speaker today. Dr. Sumaya, she is the Dean of the College of Design and at Imam Abdulrahman bin Faisal University. She's also currently a member of the Municipal Council of the Imam Metropolitan Area and a columnist. She was a co-curator for the first Saudi National Pavilion at Venice Biennale for Architecture in 2018. She received her PhD in architecture from Newcastle University in the UK and her Master of Architecture from King Faisal University. She was also a recipient of Ibn Khaldun Fellowship at MIT in 2013. Dr. Sumaya, I hope you are now with us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malak. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you and we can see you. Tfadali.
Okay, great. First of all, I'd like to thank you personally, Dr. Malak, for the invitation to this seminar. Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a great legacy to have and a great connection. I also like to thank Effat University for hosting this really important talk, and also thank the participants for being here. Like Celina already mentioned, Saudi Arabia has been influential in the United Nations, and specifically as a founding member. And when I started to think about what exactly I was going to be talking about, and especially since we're marking this 75th year now, and looking into the future, it's actually a little daunting. But one of the things that came up as I was just browsing their website was a questionnaire that they have, where they are asking about, what are the major things that the UN should be focusing on post pandemic. So, and one of the things that really came up, and I think that's really come up very strongly in design, is the title where it says strengthening solidarity between people and nations. And you may not necessarily link design to something as big as that, but I think it is in essence something that can happen. So now, for instance, with everything that's been happening around the world with COVID-19, I think one of the things that really struck the whole experience and how we've been thinking about it is how in humanity there's such a consistent emotional landscape and a universal kind of response to how this pandemic has played out. And if we look at those emotional those shared emotions, I think it's really one way to first of all really bring us together and kind of lay back all the layers that have been kind of separating us and creating those differences between us. Even though the experience might bring about different implications, just because every country has been dealing with it differently. We know that different demographics have different struggles and challenges. However, still that emotional landscape, I think, is something that is very strong that we can start to connect with. On the other side, there's always a sense of to really look at what kind of individuality do we have, you know, really promoting diversity, inclusivity, and also empathy. And I think that is kind of a complementary way of looking at things, because especially in that case, yes, we are talking about the commonalities of humans, but then we also want to celebrate the differences and actually bring them out properly, because we don't want to then start to kind of flatten civilization in a way where we don't actually have that expression. And I like a quote from Brené Brown where she says, you can't hate someone if they're close, so get closer. So, and that's, I think, one of the things that we need to do. And the question might be, what does all of this have to do with design? And it starts with empathy. So if you know anything about design thinking is a process of problem solving where you start to actually empathize with the user. You really have to understand them. You have to understand what their challenges are and their needs. And then you go into the different stages, which are defining, ideation, prototyping, and testing. But empathy is really the start of everything. And I think for me speaking today, I think I really want to highlight and promote the importance of design in actually not just solving some of the world's greatest challenges, like addressing the SDGs, but then also bringing people together, because it essentially gives people a voice that is then transferred into maybe even a built environment. I like what Dr. Maliha Hashmi said, that actually, you know, a city that is healthy by design. And that's the kind of example that I'm thinking about. So giving people a voice within that design process is something that is essential to actually bring people together and then actually have an output that reflects those needs. But then we also still have to understand how design is viewed around the world. I think design is in many ways looked at as something that's elitist. It's something that is, you know, extravagant, something that is perhaps mostly aesthetically focused. But then we have to start shifting our attention and awareness to really knowing how design is actually an element that can have a very positive impact on everything that we make. Instead of within education having these silos where we don't speak the same language, we are still not in a stage where we are talking interdisciplinary, and actually being able to help each other through that kind of design thinking. I think we really need to kind of shift away from that. So design is definitely not a luxury. It is a necessity, and it is actually something that, although a lot of things that are, you know, designed might seem expensive, but a lot of the times that expense is then offset at the end because of the way that it works, because it actually took enough time and consideration to really do something. And design is actually also a vehicle for inclusivity, because if you think about, you know, I'll give a very small example about left-handed people. So I'm sure everybody knows left-handed people in our society, and there's actually quite a few accidents that only happen because appliances, equipment, things like that are designed for right-handed people. Then, you know, you go to more extreme examples where how do you get, let's say, clean water to a community that actually doesn't have a water source nearby? So these are some areas where design can really help. So that interdisciplinary dialogue, I think, is something that is still needed. We hear a lot about promotion of STEM, but and then there's still another undercurrent there where we want to move away from STEM education to actually STEAM education. So where art and design actually comes into it. And I think this is a definite, definitely important aspect to look at. So especially in design or in education, one thing that we start appreciating perhaps is that instead of it being something that we look at in higher education, this is actually a skill that could come up much earlier, so in a K-12 education. And the reason we say this is because design is essentially a problem-solving skill. So it's a life skill, something that, you know, stays with people, and the sooner you bring it in, the more beneficial it's actually going to be in terms of the impact that we see. So design may not just be functional, and that's the flip side of it that I also want to talk about, and that's the cultural expression that comes with it. So any creative industry, architecture and design, regardless of the disciplines that fall under that very large umbrella, there's always a cultural aspect to it, an expression of who we are, who we want to be, and I think that's very important when we talk about our position in the world, and allowing people to understand who we are and who we want to be and how we engage with humanity in general, and actually also marking our time in history and really being proud of what we are able to achieve through technology and design in general. So if we think about it that way, one thing that I would like to perhaps focus on a bit is that whenever there's any cultural expression, it's usually all about what I want to say, and I would need somebody to listen. But what I find a lot of the times is that there's so much talking going on and very little listening. And if we are, you know, going to take this back to empathy, then perhaps, actually looking at what others are saying through their cultural expressions and listening to that, and then engaging, like we are here, in not just, singular expressions that are one-sided, but actually a conversation, a dialogue that then takes us forward. So for me, design is for the betterment of humanity, and that's what I would like to call for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zumaya. You know, even the words that you've used, the cultural expressions, the bringing together, the connecting to each other, understanding, getting closer to each other, is actually exactly the essence of why we're having this dialogue here, why we have this conversation. Just bring everybody together in order to have this kind of discussion, to bring our differences and make us closer with the differences that we have, in whether it's our culture, it is geography, it's demography, or whatever we come from. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. And I think I would like to take the opportunity here. I was contacted yesterday by the UN Riyadh office, and to give us, support for this session. They also shared with me a booklet that I would like to share now with all of us. It's very, very interesting because it's actually tackles the individual roles into the SDGs, which the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So we know that United Nations announced in 2015 17 SDGs, which most of our discussions today were around these SDGs, but usually thought of as a role of countries and roles of international organizations. These booklets bring these down into the fingertips of the individuals, of the youth, of the individual. How do we actually contribute to those SDGs in 170 daily actions? I will share now my screen, so hopefully you can see it with me. Okay. Okay. Do you see my screen? Okay, so basically these are the 17 SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals for the United Nations. from the poverty, covering the poverty, hunger, education, clean water, reduce inequalities, climate actions, life underwater and the marine life, life on land, and partnerships between different organizations and countries. And it actually shows here like how with simple actions in our daily life, we can actually contribute to that. So to help preventing poverty in the world, which is the goal of these SDGs, promises that by 2030 we have a better world, hopefully with no poverty, with prosperity and happiness for the humanity. So simply teaching a skill or a short course at a community center. So each one of us can do that. It's not a matter of just contributing directly money or food, it's also contributing our time. Buying clothes or other products from stores that donate a portion of these of their income to the charities. Even this kind of discussion that we're having today, generating discussions on platforms, creating a blog, talking about poverty and how other parts of the world, how people feel or suffer, the suffering of people, also considered action that we are taking towards helping the world to prevent poverty. I'm just going to go over some of the actions here recommended for the zero hunger. So it seems to be a very hard goal to achieve zero hunger in the world. But I believe that with each one of us taking part of that, we can contribute to that. For example, donating our non-perishable foods for charities. Also keep bags. See, this is a very simple example. Keeping a bag of apples or 10 food in the car for street beggars. Also supporting the local farmers by buying our own food from the markets, from the farmers' markets. Here, many hungry people hesitate to ask of the help because of the stigma, because of their shame to ask for help. But speaking about it and openly and speaking and educating others about these realities will help these hungry persons and will help them also speak up and talk about it if they need to. Good health and well-being, this is aligned exactly with what Dr. Maliha just mentioned in her speech. So just taking care of our own health or our own self is also a contribution to these global sustainable goals, which is by making time for yourself and your friends, so the well-being, getting enough sleep, eating healthy diet, never stop learning, engaging in work or educational activities that help lift other people, older people out of depression. Breastfeeding also is a contribution to that. Not stop smoking, be more active, go for walks at lunchtime or cycle or to work. Education, so quality education, teaching your native language to migrants in a youth center, even to our own workers at home. Where do we work? We can teach them our own language. This is also give them a skill. Donating our time. There's so many platforms now we have today that you can, if you are an expert, and definitely each one of us is expert in one way and in one thing, you donate your time and to provide a free course, an open course on any of these platforms, on the MOOCs platforms, or even on YouTube or Instagram. This is also part of the contribution of the skills of humans that will empower them. Donating books, of course. Starting conversations about issues that preventing education for either girls or other children in different areas and different demographics. I think I'll stop here, but this is just, I wanted to share it, and I really recommend that all of us have a look at it, benefit from it, maybe start marking all the options that we have chosen for us to contribute to these goals. So now we don't have any excuses. All of us have to contribute, inshallah. Okay, now we will do the survey that's published by the UN for this special conversations and this special occasion, and we will have all the panelists and the attendees, our speakers, contribute to that and answer, and then when we will look at the answers, and from that point we will start our discussion as well. Okay, so let's launch the survey. Okay, I just did that. Do you see the survey? So please start answering. So the first question can take up to 3 choices. We'll take just a few minutes to answer this. 20. Okay, I see now 18 have already answered. 20. Two more minutes. One more minute. Okay, now we will stop the call. Okay. Now I'm sharing the results with you directly. I think the results will lead our discussion, but I would like also in the same time to open the discussion for the attendees, give them the chance, if they like to ask questions directly, they can raise their hands, and then I can allow them to ask their questions directly. The first question was about what should the international community prioritize to recover better for the pandemic. So this is relevant to the situation of COVID-19 that we have. And apparently the highest response came at the prioritizing universal access to healthcare. Definitely because of the situation that we have at this time. Also, among the highest responses was achieving universal access to safe water and sanitation, of course. So we need to keep our hygiene, we need to keep healthy, and keeping water resources and reserving water resources is a major aspect of that. That's my area of research, by the way. I research clean water and clean energy. Also, strengthen solidarity between people and nations, and the conversation and the working together towards common goals, common global goals. Attendees, I have one that would like to ask a question. Yes, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for this wonderful meeting. Most of the speakers shared very interesting insights based on their backgrounds and their experience. I have a question for Dr. Abid, that there has been many, based on our experience in biotechnology, there has been many attempts to localize vaccine and medical device manufacturing in the kingdom, but mostly didn't pass beyond proposals being submitted by consulting firms. Very small actual actions took on ground. Do you think that the impression widely spread that we can always purchase technology and purchase whatever we need from abroad is less spread now after this pandemic? Do you see more focus on the importance of actual steps taken on ground for localization? I have also another question for Dr. Maliha, if I can. Should I wait for the answer and then raise that question, or?
You can ask your question, and then I'll have the speakers answer you.
My question to Dr. Maliha was that the ecosystem for localizing vaccine and device manufacturing requires the existence of biosafety labs levels 3 and 4 that don't exist in Saudi, with the exception of one at King Abdulaziz University level 3. But we don't have biosafety levels 4. We don't have the ability to conduct phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials for drug and vaccine developments. We don't have testing facilities for electrical, mechanical, technical, ISO standards for medical devices that exist in the kingdom. Local manufacturers or local inventors currently need to send their prototypes to Germany and Europe for testing, which takes a long time and costs a lot of money. But these things are what are called the value of death for technology. We are our innovations in the kingdom. We don't lack innovations, but the innovations fall within the death valley of technology because there is no infrastructure that helps inventors to take their idea from concept to phase 8 technology readiness level based on NASA standard that will encourage investors to invest in those technologies. So what TEMS NEOM are doing to help in pushing the innovation in the kingdom across the valley of death for technology? These are my two questions.
Thank you. So basically, your both questions about localization whether in the healthcare areas and innovation in general. So I'll have I don't know if Dr. Malak is ready to answer, or we can have Dr. Maliha.
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much for this question. I agree with you. I think the lesson was learned from this pandemic. Unfortunately, maybe we need, we shouldn't be heading with such a pandemic to teach us what we should invest in. I think it's also lesson learned across the globe, not only Saudis. Yes, we had a major step going on. I think a major thing coming also from a new national health transformation plan coming, similar to what we did for the NTP program. Now the health will have its own program, and we're working very close with them to move all of them. I'm sure you know CAC's worked with developing vaccines and small molecule manufacturing in collaboration with different partners, private sectors, and with KAUST and others. And even now, we have dedicated a special platform, we call it infectious disease emerging and re-emerging, because it's not a problem with the new viruses like COVID, like SARS-CoV-2, or it's actually a problem with also re-emerging diseases. Some groups, you know, around the world that promoting not taking vaccine and doing all of it, and we're facing a new generation with a new re-emerging diseases, antimicrobial resistance, etc. So really taking seriously now, and for the first time, at least since I returned to Saudi Arabia 5 years ago, I see all are working together, are really aligned. Ministry of Health, Research Center, CACS, all of it, which is very good, very great news for us. I will take part of what you asked, Dr. Maliha, because we also actually work on this. There is a very, now when we restructured everything with CACS, RDI system, we know we are Saudi did very well in research part of it, which is a TRL 1 to 3 or to 2, 3, if you will, but we didn't really do well on what after that, from 4 to 9. So now we really, every single project we're doing is really well designed to take it to the TRL 9 readiness level. Even from our administration, where we give historically grants to universities and academia, now we're deciding to giving grant to match funding for bigger pharma and even for entrepreneurs to start to do their R&D. This is an area where absolutely not present. We wanted people to develop their R&D, to commercialize it, to give much funding for larger pharma and even international pharma. Come and do it here and help our innovator and entrepreneurs to do more of the technology development and industrial deployment.
All right, thank you. Dr. Malak, I think I will have to ask this question. So I think as this is for the public. I mean, I'm not from medicine area, I'm not from healthcare, but really now with the current COVID-19 pandemic that's affected every human, living human today, is it going to be the last for at least a while, or is it going to be, this is a changing point where we're going to see more and more of this kind of diseases and coming up? Do we have to live differently from now on? What's the situation?
It's definitely not going to be the last. So it's definitely not going to be the last. And there's multiple studies and research been happening. Probably what make it worse right now because we are more connected, at least through digital connection. So we know more, but definitely not the last. The last decade or two, last 20 years, we had multiple hits, probably not like COVID-19, but we did have it in Saudis ourselves. We suffered. 7 years ago from the MERS-CoV
Yes.
and other things. So it's coming, and we know in some area of Saudi there is some.
What's scary is the scale. The scale is different.
Exactly. So the scale is bigger, and we have a major other problem. We had antimicrobial resistance. This has been going for years and years now. And as I said, vaccines. People stop taking vaccine. They stop giving vaccine to their kids. So we're seeing thousands of cases of measles, at least in the West, in US. This shouldn't come back, and small and other things. So it's coming. But how we are going to be prepared, I think. This is what matters. We can face this, but we really need a more integrated and cooperative, filling the gap in this value chain we have right now. Lacking of a collaborative or cooperative agreement between the major stakeholders. This is what we identified, at least in Saudi Arabia. There is people doing great things, but everybody working alone. And this is of course, we're not getting us anywhere. So we're trying to fill this gap and be ready for the next thing. And humanity, since it started, it's been faced by these diseases, and we cannot claim we're gonna just get rid of it, because we did not get rid. There is still multiple other diseases, chronic diseases, Dr. Malih has said, and other things. We couldn't end it, but we have to live with it and trying to prevent as much as we can.
Yeah, and as Dr. Maliha said, maybe she can join us now. The actually designing a life, a healthy life, this will help also preventing for the future this kind of diseases or this kind of crisis for our lives.
Absolutely. So what's really interesting is that, going back to the statement that I said, is everyone talks about sick care, which is very important, and that is the topic of discussion. But when we create a system where we're investing in healthy people right from the beginning, that sort of gives us a paradigm shift, but it also gives us an opportunity to remain healthy instead of sick. And I cannot agree more about working in silos. Is that the best thing of what we are doing now is the collaborative efforts that have suddenly been sparked by the situation, but also before, is breaking the barriers between all the different types of systems that exist. So even in terms of the health and well-being ecosystem that we're creating, there used to be, initially the healthcare system has primary care, public health, mental health. They're all different silos. So we've literally streamlined into one big health, well-being biotech ecosystem. And to answer one of the questions that one of the audience or attendees asked, yes, we are working on a hub, and we have very interesting ideas that are now being implemented in due time, which will be announced. But the whole point is that we are removing the silos and making it to one stream and 10 integrated holistic system. So when we are focusing on the chronic diseases, or when we are focusing on the pandemics, simultaneously, we're focusing on the healthy people to make them healthier, stronger, and more emotionally and physically fit to be able to tackle such unprecedented times that can happen, such as what happened right now. So it's sort of taking it from different levels. And we call it the 5-dimensional sort of health level, is that you don't look at one dimension, we're looking at multiple dimensions, and that includes mental health, because that has been really impacted nowadays, because and the most emotional support you need at this time. So it's all about collaboration and breaking the silos, and we're working on that rapidly, and some great announcements ahead, inshallah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing the good news. We go back to the question. So the second question was, taking a longer view, if you picture the world you want in 25 years, what 3 things would you most want to see? And I think the highest votes came to less conflict between, I believe, political conflict between different countries and between different populations. And it shows how much we are affected by the conflict around us, and how is it affecting feeling safe in our world. And this is, but also other responses came for greater equality within countries, better access to education, of course, and more sustainable consumption and production. So living in a sustainable way. We stop being only consumers, and we produce, but also reserve and conserve our planet, a better planet overall, I believe. The third question was, I think if any of the speakers would like to comment on that, or we can move on. Yes, okay. Then the third question was about the global trends. And we know that today we have mega trends that's governing the globe and affecting our lives, and we expect some of these to continue in a more severe way, and some of them will hopefully diminish or will be reduced. So the most responses came to, or the most votes came to risk related to health. Again, this is part of the situation that we have today, pandemics and greater resistance to antibiotics, as Dr. Malak mentioned, risk arising from new technologies. That's the fear of technology in general. They are privacy, the automation, the impact of automation on our jobs and our youth jobs, as mentioned also by Mr. Uthman. Climate change and environmental issues. These issues, climate change, been at the forefront of the issues that globally have been addressed. Also in Saudi Arabia, have been great attention into addressing climate change and contributing to that. Within the G20, also there's a large discussion about how we are doing that, and it was proposed by our Minister of Energy, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, the model that the country, because we're always perceived as contributing to global carbon dioxide because of the fossil fuels and because of that we are oil producing country. But the model that we produce includes also recapturing the carbon from the industry, from the fuel, and in order to use it again in industry in a productive way. So this is very, very powerful model that's been proposed, and it's actually been implemented by Saudi Aramco, by other larger industrial companies in Saudi Arabia. Any of the speakers, if you would like to contribute, or even attendees, this is an open discussion. It's not just my discussion. So if you like to comment on anything, feel free to do that. Question number 4 was, how important or not is it for countries to work together to manage the above trends? Of course, it is. More major answers came as essential, of course. Number 5, has COVID-19 changed your views on cooperation between countries? Okay. Yes, of course. Now favor more cooperation. Now we believe that we need to be. It's really we're brought into a stage that we are really seeing and realizing how we are affected by each other actions. Actions in China affects a person living in Asiyat in Saudi Arabia and everywhere. So we now believe that more cooperation definitely is needed because of this situation. I believe what happened just brought the humanity and forcefully into the forefront of technology. Everybody now we have to use technology in order to survive, and into that stage where realizing how we are together living in one universe, not anymore that each one is acting separately or trying to work in separate stages. Overall, do you think that people in 2045 would be better off, worse off, or the same as they are today? Alhamdulillah, we all agree that, not all, 60% agree that we will be better off, inshallah, by 2045. This is optimistic views, but also from what we see today, from the advancement of science, of technology, it's also an indicator that hopefully, inshallah, humanity will be better off. Okay, I think this concludes the survey that we have, and I will have last a few minutes for the attendees to ask more questions. I think we have Q&A. We have about 11 questions. It will be very hard to answer all of those, but there is a question. I think think, how can we volunteer to help teach English at any level to poorer nations, especially villages anywhere in the world that have no access to schools? That's a general question for any of the speakers, and I can answer that. There's many platforms, my dear, that you can find online that actually provides tutoring, provides teaching, and you can offer your service. Usually these services are paid. You can offer it for free, so you don't even have to go there. You can do it online from these platforms. There is a question for Dr. Sumaya. What did design education learn from the pandemic of COVID-19?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Mirvet, for asking that question. I've been thinking about it since I saw it, and I think it might be a bit premature to think about design education itself and what it learned, but I think that because we all went through this experience, one thing that was, became very glaringly obvious is that many of our houses are not designed to accommodate this kind of living, where we're working from home, studying from home. Let's say in traditional societies, you would find that many of the rooms, spaces in the house would have multiple uses. Our houses are designed mostly so that every room has one function. Yet when it now came to actually coexist and work in that same environment, it was very hard to differentiate between those different types of lives, where it was very hard to draw the boundaries. And maybe that's not necessary, but I think especially going forward, if we think about the future of work, and now with many institutions and even governments thinking about actually working from home, and these flexible hours is actually something that is beneficial or that could be useful in the future. This can reduce pollution, let's say traffic congestion, all these different things that will have an impact on the cities. That's why I think that perhaps the most important part to redesign or maybe rethink is actually the way we live, and having these spaces. At a global level, through sustainability concerns, I think there's been a very strong push to move towards smaller individual spaces, but having better designed public spaces. So having shared facilities. So instead of us, expanding our territory this much, we could actually, have much more common space. However, if we're looking at, social distancing, this then becomes a very different way of looking at it. What does a shared space mean in the light of a pandemic, where we're actually not supposed to be coming together, in great crowds, and how do we redesign thinking about that? Infection control is something that I think has been studied quite extensively, and I mean specifically in areas like, for instance, airports, or even smaller enclosed spaces like an aircraft or an airplane. So if we start to now think about infection control and actually trying to prevent that within the design, that might be something that actually comes into the equation, even at a smaller level, using utilities or appliances, and making sure that, I think one of the things that people talked about was, let's say an ATM machine. A lot of people will use that. How do you actually make sure that something like that, which is used by a lot, is not going to be something that will spread disease? So perhaps these are some of the functional elements that are going to come into design, but at a more human, social level, I think it's a lot to do with how we think about the spaces that we work in and the spaces that we live in, and how we can design those better to suit more flexible arrangements that might arise out of situations that were unpredictable, like this one.
All right, thank you. That was a tough question. Thank you for answering that.
Thank you.
Okay, I think it's already 4:50, so we came to the conclusion of this discussion. Very fruitful, exceptionally inspiring and motivational discussion, great discussion. Thank you. I would like to thank all the speakers, amazing contribution. Thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for enlightening us from your own area of expertise. As I mentioned at the beginning of this session, the survey results and the dialogue here, we have a note taker who's going to take all these notes and compile the report that will be sent to the UN. I would like to thank our attendees for their enthusiasm and being here with us in this during Ramadan, during this time and the lockdown. This is also a contribution from them and willing to participate to this kind of discussion. If you have, we could not answer all your questions. We have many questions, about, I see 9 questions in the QA and some in the chat. So if you have any questions that we could not answer you, please send us an email. If you have specific questions to the speakers, I can forward that to them. If you would like to receive the 170 daily actions booklet, please let me know and I will share that with you. Also, the video recording will be on Ifat University YouTube channel, so you can all review again or you can share it also with others. Thank you so much for your contribution and for the wonderful attendees and the speakers, and wish you all a wonderful breakfast and weekend. And thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Malak. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Malak. Thank you, Dr. Maliha.
Thank you. Dr. Malak, I had just one quick something I just wanted to share, just to everyone. I keep
sorry, and I didn't realize the time, so I didn't give the chance.
No. I just wanted to just say one quick thing. One final thought is I always get asked about technology making things less humanistic.
Yeah, that was one of the questions. Yes.
And as we close this session, I want everyone to reflect that technology is what brought us together to this session.
Thank you so much. That's powerful. Thank you.